Hey, good evening, and welcome to this week's edition of the Ride Along Radio Show, the show where you have two police veterans to give you a perspective, an informed perspective and opinions on issues of the day that involve law enforcement and the community, public safety, et cetera, et cetera. I'm George Holt. I did 25 years in law enforcement here in Southern California, and to my right is the one and only.
the man, the myth, the legend, the Golden Mic winner from public radio. Gil Contreras.
Gil Contreras.
Sure.
And Gil can tell you a little bit about his law enforcement background. We always start as if nobody's ever, you haven't seen the show before. And hopefully you are a new viewer, because that'd be great. The more the merrier, right?
Yeah, I really hate talking to myself. So if you just Google my name, you'll learn more about me than you ever cared to know.
There might be some stuff on there he don't even know is on there. So
suffice it to say that George and I worked at the same department in the early days of his career. And, and then I moved on.
The Wild West.
Yeah, that's what it was. Used to do narcotics enforcement listening to Kumo D back in the day. But you don't hear me, though.
The Wild West.
The Wild West.
Yeah, complete with the gunshots.
The real gunshots, for sure.
Real gunshots fired,
For sure.
So on the Ride Along Radio Show, and this is show number 39. We're almost at the magical number of 40. So we've been at this for a little bit. I think we started last September, right?
So when we get to show 100, does somebody bring us a cake?
I think they're going to bring us donuts or something.
Oh.
At show 100. I think that's what it is. Donuts with a candle on it or
Is
something.
that the producer? Is that who does that, or do we do that?
Yeah, I think so. I think that our producer is supposed to go get us a donut cake or something at show 100. But that's a long way off. We ain't even halfway there yet.
We're getting there.
We'll get there. We're
getting there.
So, again, you'll find us kind of an interesting matchup here, because we have some things we agree about, and we have some things we ain't never going to agree about. but one of which will only be relevant till November. Then after that, it'll be decided on November 8th. But we also we're very outspoken.
One of us will be moving to the Bahamas.
I'll be right here. But you can go with your boy. Because he'll get run out. But anyway,
it'd be you, Whoopi.
Yeah. Well, okay. To give you some background on that, Gil and I have
a bunch of y'all.
Gil and I have a running thing. I said if Donald Trump gets elected, I'm gone. I'm out of here. So every time Donald Trump says something that gets him a surge in the polls, I get a text from Gil saying, "Hey, where are you moving again? Where are you moving again?" So fortunately, I'm not worried about it. But we'll see. And something like that, we'll know November 9th.
Yeah.
Time will tell.
The arrogance of progressives is funny to me, but we shall see.
Yeah, we'll see.
We gonna see.
We are, and it'll be beyond a shadow of a doubt. I think it'll be resounding.
It's going to be beyond a reasonable doubt.
Beyond all doubt. So, but also, we're both pretty outspoken. Okay, and we were outspoken when we were police officers who were more or less beholden to department regulations and department oversight. And we didn't really care then too much about that. We kind of just, say what's on your mind. At least
it didn't win me any points, I'll tell you that.
Didn't win me any points either. And I retired as a sergeant too, but I probably would have left as a captain or maybe even a chief if I had played the game a little bit more, but I don't care about that. This is much better.
As I look back, I think, man, I should have just stayed. I left before retirement. I just got fed up. I was just fed up with the department, fed up with small department politics.
Right, and you know what? And having gone from a smaller department to one that was many times that size, it's the same thing, just on a grander scale, and then you don't get some of the protections you get in a smaller department either. Yeah. But then you also don't have all the hiding places in a bigger department you do in a smaller department either.
Right. Because in my business, we do canines, right? I have dogs, and we train with the guys from Adel Horst every now and again to keep Rhonda's narcotic sniffing skills up. And so I get to meet a bunch of young coppers, right?
Sure. They're fairly young. They're canine handlers. They're fairly young.
They're in their 30s, early 30s usually. But a lot of them are just very unhappy. It's a tough time to be a cop right now.
Sure it is.
And I hear a lot of them talk, and my advice now as the old sage guy in the back of the room,
right?
My advice to them is, what? No matter what's going on, no matter how bad you think it is, it will pass.
Yes.
When you're in the department, there's really good times.
Yep.
Everything is humming your way. And then there's changes, a new chief, somebody gets promoted. Next thing you know, you go from the good boy list to the shit list. And there's nothing you can do about it.
Well, and that's the thing, okay? And that's why I always laugh. And having In my 25-year career, I counted it up. I think I served under 14 or 15 different heads of departments, 14 or 15 different chiefs of police. So what does that tell you? It tells you that they come and go. So when I see people rally up under the new chief and forsake their old buddies, it's like, you don't realize this dude's going to be gone in like 2 or 3 years?
Right.
And then you're going to be here with us? You know? But you always see that happening. But we had an old captain, rest his soul, Captain Willie Thompson. He used to say, this place is like a wheel. One day you're on top, and the next day you're on the bottom. But one thing about that wheel, it's going to keep turning. And he was right. It does. It's just Department of Politics. So those of you young coppers out there, hang in there and tough it out.
No matter how bad it feels.
Right.
It's a different world.
It'll get better.
It's a different world when you leave law enforcement. You know, it took me a minute to adjust to civilian life.
Right.
You know, it takes a minute, and so they say once a cop, always a cop, and I think that's what led me back to where I am now with the business that I'm in. I can do a number of things, and I have done a number of things, but I just like suiting up, booting up, getting out in the field with the doggy now.
Right.
And going where most places people don't want to go.
Well, you know what, the thing, I was telling somebody this yesterday. One of my partners, one of my old teammates at my last department got hurt pretty bad. He got hit by, he's a motor officer on a motorcycle, got hit by a drunk driver, right? So we had a fundraiser for him yesterday, and people came from all over the South Bay, all these different agencies, and even from outside of that area came to participate in the fundraiser. It was a barbecue, and sold lunches and stuff. And I was telling somebody, they go, hey, how's retirement? Don't you miss it? Don't you miss the job? I said, you know what? I don't miss the bullshit from the administration. I don't miss the bullshit from the assholes in the street. All I missed was the camaraderie, and I'm getting that right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm here with you guys, and that's my camaraderie fix. So that's the part I miss. Now, as Gil said earlier, don't worry. If it's kind of bad for you now in your career, just wait, and it'll rotate back around. Conversely, if everything's going your way right now, stand by, because eventually that wheel's going to spin. Enjoy it, because that wheel's going to spin to another position.
Yeah,
so just be ready for that.
Yeah, and don't be like Gil. I mean, just don't burn bridges. And I was outspoken, and I just spoke my mind. I just thought I was the neatest thing since microwave popcorn, and I learned after I left the job that I'm just a guy. The department did just fine without me.
Well, and that's the thing, right? His department is going to roll on without nobody's indispensable in a law enforcement agency, right?
But I thought I was.
Oh, well.
I thought it was somebody.
See, I always knew better than that. And they taught me very early on I wasn't indispensable.
I thought it was somebody, and come to find out, I ain't nobody. So I don't know how that worked.
Well, everybody's somebody,
Oh, that's right. In the new America,
everybody's somebody.
Everybody's
you get a participation
special.
trophy.
We're special.
So one of the things we do every week is we do a recap or follow-up from the last show. And last week we did a segment on sovereign citizens. It was related to the Corinne Gaines shooting in Baltimore County, where the young lady was killed by the police after they came to her house to arrest her on an arrest warrant that stemmed from her not appearing in court as a result of a traffic stop that had occurred 3 or 4 months earlier. It was all over the national news. And
they had a warrant for her boyfriend, apparently.
Yeah, I guess they did, right? Yeah, okay. So that show kind of opened the door into this can of worms known as the sovereign citizen movement. And I was surprised to learn that there is a small but growing number of African American adherents to the sovereign citizen philosophy, because it was actually started based on white supremacy.
Correct.
In the 1960s. So to find out now that there is it's basically this ethnocentric movement, this Afrocentric component of that thing is kind of wild to me. It would be almost like if they had a black portion of the Klan. You know what I mean? Like a black chapter of the Klan or something. I don't get it. I mean, the ideology to me is twisted. So we spoke on that, and then we got some comments on our YouTube, which is where we really like to see them, because then we're right there. We can respond to you. You don't have to be connected to us on Facebook or anything like that. You can watch it and respond. So we did, and someone said, and I'll say the name here, Tony Watson, and annotated says always Tony. So Tony Watson says policy enforcers, erroneously called police officers, are just what the phrase implies. Contracted workers hired by the municipal corporation, not voted for by we the people, to enforce policy, statutes, codes, and regulations, or commerce, which has nothing to do with we the people. So, and it's more, but I'm not going into all that. You can go on our YouTube page if you want to see the entire 3 paragraphs. But this is what we talked about in terms of the sovereign citizens not recognizing any authority other than that of the county sheriff in terms of law enforcement, because the county sheriff is an elected official. And for them, in their strict interpretation or loose interpretation of the Constitution, depending on how you look at it, nobody else has the authority to levy any, to detain them or levy any fines, et cetera, et cetera. So I clicked on the YouTube profile, which I always do when somebody makes a comment, just so I kind of understand maybe a little bit about where the person might be coming from.
Right.
And I found that Miss Toni Watson is a female African American.
Okay.
And so I asked the question, how does that jibe with the whole sovereign citizen deal? You know, because sovereign citizens, not only there's that whole racist thing, but the part of their racist belief is that blacks cannot be part of that sovereign citizen movement because they are indeed citizens as granted by the U.S. Constitution, because the 14th Amendment abolished slavery and made African Americans a total person instead of the old 3/5 rule. Actually, your citizenship has been granted to you by a constitutional amendment. Therefore, you are indeed subject to the laws of the land, et cetera, et cetera. And so then I got a response about, I'm not a citizen, I'm not a citizen, a citizen's a subject, I'm not a subject of anything, da-da-da-da-da. So it got a little deeper than I expected it to. But it's very interesting to see that people have this take. And the thing I noticed, though, is that they don't just leave. I don't know. There's sovereign citizens who are from America who are elsewhere now, because they seem to just be sticking around here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, this is interesting because it really, in a broader context, we have a lot of people who hate America. And they're not going anywhere.
Right.
You know, activist groups who hate the country, hate it was built on slavery and built on oppression of people of color, and the white people came.
And my thing is this: I'm not a love it or leave it guy. I don't believe, hey, love it or leave it. I believe that you can want this country to be better, but you should work on it being better, as opposed to being negative and not offering any solutions. I'm a firm believer in that. And also, you know, because this country was in large part founded on the backs of slave labor, hell, the price of admission's already been paid. So stay and make the most of it, you know? So I don't understand people who just want to not offer any solutions. Because regardless, even though it's not perfect, it's still the best country in the world.
That's right.
And if it wasn't, you wouldn't be here. That's right. So let's be real, because ain't nobody holding you. You can leave. This ain't Cuba.
Right.
This ain't the old Soviet Union. You can leave whenever you get ready.
Yeah, I just think, you know, the thing that gets in the way is instead of people focusing on what they should do to make themselves and their own lives better, they want to, quote, make a difference, close quote, in the community, in the country. They want to change.
There's nothing wrong with that.
It's a waste of time. You know, if
to try to make a difference in the community?
That's right. You know, it's not my community. I live where I live, for God's sakes.
Now, when you say community, you mean like racial subdivisions?
I mean,
or what do you mean?
Wherever we live.
That's your community, right?
That's where I live.
Yeah.
But I don't rely on anybody else that lives there to do anything or be part of my something.
So you don't have that sense of community. You're like a rugged individualist, right? You're self-reliant, and
all I'm saying is that, you know, I don't know what, quote, community, close quote, I need to do anything for me or to help me do. I'm not sure what. You know, in terms of business, networking with other businesses, in marketing of services and exchanging it, that makes sense to me. But in terms of, you know, I want to make a difference in the community.
But you don't live off by yourself, though.
No, I don't.
You do live in a community, right? With other people.
I do, but I don't go in their house. They don't come in mine.
So
I don't know what goes on in their house.
We've gotten away from the old concept of the town hall, right, and that whole communal kind of living that probably used to exist before people were able to isolate themselves off so much by technology, et cetera.
That was all tried in the 60s.
Well, I don't mean communal like a hippie commune where people sit around taking peyote and barefooted. I don't mean that. I mean
to be nonsense.
I don't mean communal like that, like a hippie commune. I mean like the sense of community where a bunch of people they go to the same church and they da-da-da-da-da-da.
Okay, that's fine. If you want to go to church, go to church. Beautiful. You know, talk to Jesus, talk to Jesus. In fact, I'll quote some scripture. You know what Jesus said? I'll tell you what Jesus said. If I have to.
Hold on.
If I have to, I'm going to tell you what Jesus said. Jesus said, don't lighten up, tighten up. That's what Jesus said.
Well, was that Jesus or was that Jesus?
No, that was Jesus.
Okay. I want to make sure. He said,
don't lighten up,
I don't know if that was Jesus or Jesus, but okay.
He didn't say, you know, tighten up the community. He said tighten up. That's individual.
Okay, that's chapter and verse for that?
You want me to quote scripture?
Yeah, chapter and verse.
It's in the book of Gil. It's in the book of Gil.
Yeah, okay. All right.
You don't hear me, though. Is this thing on? Hello? Test, test?
It's on, unfortunately. Okay. All right. So that was some of our social media feedback. Ismail Fahmy says, in my informed opinion, the citizens wouldn't just protest if they were better educated on policing. The citizens need to understand how policies are made, how police are investigated, how police are put into positions such as police chief, assistant chief, et cetera. He's talking about the Marilyn Mosby thing. Remember we talked about the acquittal of the Baltimore officers?
Right.
How the elected governor, mayor, commissioner, et cetera, play a role. More importantly, police unions are a labor organization, so their job is to protect the interests of their members. Also, and he asked, can we speak on how general order becomes the integral law over the state law for most states when policemen are involved? Also, the state can defer to the police stations where they can decide to fire, suspend without pay, or some other form of discipline. You know, we can get into discipline on a later show. That would be good. I think we did talk about the police disciplinary process a while ago, but we can drill down into a little bit more.
Right, because I think people would be surprised to find out how many cops actually lose their jobs.
Oh yeah,
how many cops are fired every week,
and for stuff that you wouldn't even think. It's, you know, people say, well, police are above the law. The flip side of that is police get fired for stuff that butchers wouldn't get fired for, and school teachers wouldn't get fired for, and doctors wouldn't get fired for, and burger flippers wouldn't get fired for. There's stuff that police officers can get fired for that don't. So there's that standard there. That there's some leeway, but the other side, the leash is a lot tighter too.
Yeah, and if you talk to LAPD guys, they think their disciplinary process is blatantly unfair. And
well, they've been talking about that for years since Chief Parks.
But I think most cops, and their unions that protect them, feel that the departments are treating their employees in an unfair way, and because I was at our department, I was the vice president of our union. And I found myself, really what my job was to protect the member from as much discipline as possible, no matter what they did.
No matter whether they deserved it or not.
Right.
Well, like a good defense attorney. Sure.
Exactly.
Sure.
Exactly. And so, when you work on the other side like that, you realize, well, people think cops get away with everything, and I'm here to tell you, there are lines drawn, and you have to operate within those lines. And if you don't, you could face disciplinary or termination.
Yeah, up to and including.
Yeah.
So listen, we got a couple of clips, and we're going to. There was one that had a story attached to it. It's going to take too much time. I'll circle back around to that next week about it's discipline, not child abuse.
Okay, I just want to
go ahead.
Before we move on, I just want to say thank you to Trish.
Oh, definitely.
Trish, thank you. My sister Trish.
Baby sis Trish.
Navarat Nasingham. I call her Trish the Progressive. She sat in here last week with us and
did a fine job.
She tried to take me to task. I watched the video. Yeah, she tried.
No, it was some.
Hey, you better watch the video.
There was some shots fired. I watched the replay.
You better watch the edited version.
Oh, your edited. Okay, I see.
But
that's that Fox News tactic.
Yeah. Anyway, don't make me go crazy. Don't make me go all Don Lemon on you, okay?
Oh wow.
I'll lose it real quick, okay?
Like Don Lemon.
I'll go crazy.
What did he say? Are you going to let me get a word in edgewise, as we said to David Clark, the sheriff? He got intimidated. Don Lemon got punked on that one.
Anyway, I just want to say thank you to Trish.
Yeah, thank you, Trish. That was great, and I hope to have you back anytime you want to come back.
Well, not anytime.
Anytime you want to come back.
If we have an open show.
Yeah.
If we have a slot. Yeah, if we have a slot.
We'll fit you in.
Sure.
So we had a situation where a police officer in Utah went to Subway to eat fresh. And he got a little more than he bargained for. So we're going to roll that clip, and then we're going to talk about this because this is scandalous.
What's up, guys? Nadeska Alexis here for Complex News. Your parents have probably warned you at least once in your life that you shouldn't accept drinks from strangers, but generally when you're in a restaurant, even a fast food restaurant, you'd hope that your beverages are safe. But this week, a Subway employee in Layton, Utah, drugged a police officer who came in for lunch. The officer, a sergeant in the Layton Police Department, would later recall that his lemonade had tasted funny with at least a hint of chemicals in it. On his way back to the police station, he almost ran a red light because he was struggling to hit the brake, and other officers quickly noticed that he was under the influence of narcotics since he couldn't focus on questions being asked, and he was, quote, trying to move his arm, but his arm wouldn't move when he thought it would. The officer was quickly taken to the hospital, and when his drink was tested at a lab, traces of THC and meth were found in it. Police reviewed security footage from the Subway restaurant and found that 18-year-old employee Tanis Lloyd Yukino is acting pretty suspect. Another police official told Fox News in Utah that the suspect left the sergeant's drink on the counter and left the picture frame. In the video, you can see him returning with something in his hand and then leaning over the sergeant's drink for an unusual amount of time. The suspect then provided the sergeant with the drink. Yukino was arrested, but of course he denied putting anything in the officer's cup. Cops haven't figured out a motive for the offense yet, but they're confident that this is an isolated incident. The officer is now at home resting with his family, and Yukino was booked on a charge called surreptitious administration of a substance. If you haven't heard of this charge before, just know that it's a second-degree felony. Subway has since issued a statement saying they are cooperating with the police to investigate the incident. For more news, make sure you subscribe to Complex on YouTube. I'm Nadeska Alexis for Complex News.
All right.
Wow.
So one of the things that came to my mind in watching that was that must have been a drive-through Subway, because usually you get your own drink at Subway, right?
Right.
It's not set up for them to make your drink for you. But unless
it was a drive when I read it.
It must have been a drive-through. I saw the picture of it. It looked like it may have had a drive-through next to it. And you don't see those too often, actually. I've seen one in Phoenix, I think, But in any case, that circumstance allowed that sergeant to fall victim to that. And it was said to me a long time ago that if you're a police officer in uniform and you go into enough restaurants over a long enough career, eventually you're going to ingest somebody's bodily fluids, bodily substance, something nasty. But this is like narcotics is usually, that's not something that's happened a whole lot before. The other stuff you wouldn't even know it because it's biological mostly, right? And you wouldn't even know that you
Plus,
had.
if you're at like Sizzler, you can't tell anyway.
Oh,
just kidding. 4th of Vermont, just kidding.
Yeah, that was the one. But we've had situations where people's food gets screwed with. Okay, and I don't just mean police officers. At my old agency, my last agency, we had a situation where we had people who were preparing meals for first-class passengers on aircraft. Okay. And they found that they were spitting in the salads that they were making for the first-class passengers. Because salads all mixed up, chopped up. So they were like hawking big loogies into the salad and then mixing it up. Somebody got pissed off at those people who were doing it, and they told. Okay? So they went over there, and I guess through surveillance footage and just interviewing people, they actually found, this is exactly what happened. And, of course, they had thrown all the salads away, but who knows at what point and how long that had been going on for, right? I heard of another situation where an employee at a fast food restaurant that, they're a nationwide chain and they make Mexican food. And let's just say the word taco is not the first part of their name. It's the second part of their name, and I'll leave it at that. But there was a worker there who fell into the habit of having intercourse with the beans. Okay?
Ew.
Yes. And this was here in Southern California, by the way. And a guy we know arrested him. And I guess he liked the beans because they were warm, they're kind of stiff, and they had texture. They're bumpy, because they're beans. They had texture, and so somebody complained about it or informed on him, and they set up CCTV cameras on him to watch him. And sure enough, man, they watched him long enough, and he went to the back, dropped his trousers, and when they sprung out and grabbed him, he was digging out the beans. Literally, and he was taken into custody. But how many burritos have been made with those beans? Right, it happened. And okay, so
that's why I don't eat Mexican food.
Well,
Mexican food will kill you over a lifetime.
One way or another, right? So we've had this happen here, and in California, it's called adulteration of food, and it's a problem. Okay, and it's a misdemeanor. So it usually comes, or it can come with a jail sentence, although it should come with an ass whooping if you're messing with somebody's food. That to me is just the lowest. That's just the lowest shit ever, man. You're paid to prepare people's food, and you're putting stuff in people's food.
Well, now they want $15 an hour, so I'm sure it's justified. I'm sure.
Yeah. See, this doesn't help the cause, does it?
Yeah, exactly.
Doesn't help the cause. But for cops, though, again, this is something I know a lot of cops who bring their lunch because of this. And if you're a deputy sheriff, like working in a custody environment, like my son is. Often they allow you to eat in the chow hall, right? They have a separate mess hall for the officers and one for the prisoners. But guess what? The prisoners are making food on both sides. Right. So you have inmates making your food, and they're supposed to be trustworthy, but they're in there for a reason.
You get to watch them, though. When you give your tray, you get to watch what they're doing.
Yeah, you get to watch them, but you don't know what they did behind there to all of it. because that's all staff food. They're making staff food, and they know they're making staff food.
When I was in the Army, I worked in the jail also because I was an MP, and we ate the food all the time.
Sure,
and it was
because it's free. It's all in the Army. It's free anyway. See, I bet it was, and that's a secret sauce, right? So you never know. But that's just a danger. That's happened before, and that's one of those things where.
Driving through, when I see cops in drive-throughs and.
Well, it's bad for a couple reasons.
Safety number one,
yes.
Because I see cops in drive-through, and not only in the drive-through, but talking on a cell phone.
In the drive-through.
They're not talking to the Sarge. They're not talking to the LT.
Right.
They're talking to the girl. You see what I'm saying?
In the drive-through.
Yeah. They go, oh, wait, hold on. I got my wife's on the other line. Hold on, sweetie.
Oh,
just kidding. Just kidding.
Allegedly.
I heard that happens.
Allegedly.
I don't know.
Allegedly.
I don't know.
Yes, allegedly.
I understand it does, though.
I heard that. But they say a lot of things. They say that, but they say a lot of things.
And I don't know who they are.
No, nobody knows. Nobody knows. But so that does happen. But it's bad for you to be in the drive-through, officers, because number one, tactically it's not good. And number two, get out and show yourself in the establishment and let people kind of see you in there and kind of do a little deterrence for crime,
Right, but I think you also have to, you have to remember those two LVPD Metro cops that were killed in Las Vegas.
And CC's Pizza, yeah.
They were having Code 7, man.
They were sitting down eating.
Yep. 4 officers up in Lakewood, Washington, on a slow Sunday morning. They all got capped right at the table.
Yep.
3 of them died at the table. One, he was wounded. He tried to fight, but he lost
tried to
the
get
fight.
to his gun. He couldn't do it, yeah.
He ended up.
So it's a dangerous
So no matter where you are, all this talk about, cops are too quick to use their gun and deadly force, and we need new policies and talk to the community. At the end of the day, it's a dangerous freaking job. And a cop cannot let his guard down, even going to have freaking Code 7.
No, you're right. Never. Whenever you're in uniform in public, you got to.
That's right. You got to stay at that one level. And, and I love quoting retired General Mattis from the United States Marine Corps, who said, be kind, be courteous, and have a plan to kill everyone you meet. And, when I was teaching Homeland Security at the vocational college, that was exactly what I told them. This is the line you have to walk if you want to work in law enforcement. Be kind, be courteous, and prepare to kill everyone that you meet.
Or you can take out your wallet and break out that dollar bill and flip it over to the back and see that American eagle on the rear of the dollar bill.
Don't waste your time.
Yes, and then you'll see that American eagle's got the olive branch of peace in one claw and the arrows of war in the other.
No thanks.
And that's how you have to roll. With,
here's what you do: you walk
one and keep the other one ready.
You ever watch cops walk into Starbucks? They walk in. They don't just walk in and start looking. They walk in, scan.
Right, sure.
I'm looking for anybody who looks like a goddamn parolee. Okay, no threats observed. Okay, you step up.
And you still stay at alert.
That's right, because I'm standing like this. Hands on my gun.
But you should know what you want at Starbucks anyway.
I know what I want.
Yeah.
But I might want a little something else. I might want a little something. Or I might be.
That's what'll kill you quicker than Mexican food.
Or I might be trying to stall to say, "Oh yeah, you guys don't have to pay."
Oh, wow.
I'm just kidding.
Allegedly, that doesn't happen. Not at Starbucks. Anyway,
Starbucks.
No, actually, I don't remember. I've been retired for so long. I really don't remember.
Well, I'm telling you. I'm telling you. So you
allegedly. All right. So okay. So listen. We have one more story, but we can roll back to that at the end of the show. We can get to that one.
There is a couple of news stories that I wanted to talk, or at least one, and it was LAPD shooting in Hollenbeck
recently. Yesterday.
It was yesterday,
yes.
and the gang unit ended up shooting a 14-year-old,
right,
alleged gang member, and apparently he was spraying graffiti.
Right, they got a call because somebody called in because of graffiti. Right.
So they respond. Kid sees him. He takes off running. Officers go in foot pursuit. He rounds the corner at Breed in Chicago. Now, according to the officers and other witnesses, the suspect fired a round as the officers were rounding the corner.
Right.
One of the officers engaged the suspect with deadly force.
Right,
put him down. There's a witness, because I read the LA Times story today, second story about the vigil they held for the 14-year-old. And LA Times interviewed a woman who said she was sitting in her vehicle at a traffic light at Breed in Chicago, and that as the suspect rounded the corner, he reached into his waistband, pulled out the handgun, and tossed it. As it hit the ground, it went off. As the officer rounded the corner, he had just heard the gunshot. He rounded the corner and engaged the suspect. Now, I don't know if the suspect was facing him or facing away from him, but it's going to be – that one is not an easy one to call. And
it's
that's
not,
the point
especially so preliminarily, right?
Correct.
Not an easy one to call. But let's say this, too. It's an old West-style single-action revolver which means it's not unlikely, not unlikely that it would have gone off when it hit the ground.
It could have,
not just because he pulled the trigger. Not unlikely. So wow. Well, let's track that one, man, because that's going to be, not that a 14-year-old should have a loaded gun and be running from the police anyway, but it doesn't mean if he wasn't presenting any threat at the time doesn't mean he should have been shot. So
right, because that's what the law says and that's what department policy says, and I hope the officers are right.
Me too.
And this goes back to the conversation we tried to have when we had Frank Stoltz here. About officer-involved shootings, and that is, one of the things that I brought up at that show, and I've actually written an op-ed piece, and I'm submitting it to the LA Times, see if they'll print it, but calling for another unit out of either the public defender's office, the alternate public defender's office, or a privately contracted firm like mine,
of course,
who would that would conduct, have a officer-involved shooting rollout team that would respond just like the detectives do.
Right, I remember you saying that.
Because as you look at all of the systems that are put into action after an officer-involved shooting on duty occurs, everything that is happening is generally for the officer's protection, and for protection of the city.
Public. Yeah,
it's liability that comes first. The public comes third, but it's the officer and then the liability to the city. And there is no one who is viewing.
Oh, I'm thinking about the public safety statement. Okay, I got you.
Yeah. So there is no one who is viewing the officer-involved shooting from the perspective of who's here on behalf of the decedent.
Right, the person who got shot, whether they die or not. By the way,
well,
who's here on behalf of the
if they don't die, exactly, because if they don't die, they go to prison, or they go to 13th floor first, but then they end up in prison eventually.
Sure,
and it's months before they get assigned a defense investigator.
Right, and by that time, the whole other thing's been disposed. Sure.
Yeah, and the best time to get those statements is, it's
right,
like the TV show, the first 48. That's when you're going to get your best information. You can find witnesses. They're still close. You can do some work there. 6 months down the road, it's very difficult to find people who were there.
Sure, forget about it. And any credibility with
or even want to talk by 6 months later.
Exactly.
So anyway, that's my point, is that in a shooting like this one that occurred in Hollenbeck, it's a questionable one in my view. It's not.
See, I didn't know all that, but based on that, I agree with you. There's some questions.
It's not a clear-cut one, and and I think the presence of a third investigator who wasn't with the DA
doesn't have an axe to grind, doesn't have a dog in the fight.
Right. Is there just? I think that would force the other law enforcement components who are doing their investigation to be even more above board than they might feel otherwise a need to be.
Well, and you know what? And who maybe some federal agency comes in and does that, but people don't want to give up local control, right?
Right. Well, I think the federal agency doesn't need to come in until there's a discrepancy. A defense investigator shooting team like that would go to the scene, do the exact same thing that the police officers are doing, but with less of a bent.
Right.
I'm not leaning towards the cop.
Right.
And
because they're not investigating their own employing agency.
Right. Because I think there are Black Lives Matter people who are still occupying City Hall East, downtown Los Angeles,
to get rid of Charlie Beck.
And they just submitted 8,000 signatures, a petition to the mayor's office requesting him that Charlie Beck be fired for this. And as much of a problem as I have with the Black Lives Matter philosophy in general, the thing that strikes me is that there are people who just feel that no one is listening to them, especially not government, especially not law enforcement, when it comes to officer-involved shootings.
Right.
And they're looking for someone to be on their side. And right now, there isn't. There's only someone on the side of the city or on the side of the police department, on the side of the police officer.
That's a good point.
And so I think, I'm hoping the Times will run the op-ed.
That'd be great, man. Maybe you get some actually see, and then you can impact your community in a positive way.
Well, I'm not looking to I'm not looking to impact the community. I'm just trying to provide a service.
All right. Well, see, yeah, there you go. Your community. All right. So we're going to go to a break. We're going to come back and get into our topic, and our topic today is police checkpoints and the legality of police checkpoints. So we're going to go to a break, come back, and we'll be right here. All right, so welcome back to the Ride Along Radio Show. And I haven't given out the number, probably because the little placard that's there to remind me isn't here, but it's 323-293-3375 if you'd like to call and join the conversation. So tonight, we're going to be talking about the legality of police checkpoints. And our guest via Skype is attorney Warren Redlich, who is the founder of Fair DUI. And basically, in a nutshell, their mission statement says to protect the innocent and focus on education over punishment. Warren, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Outstanding. So can you give the people a little bit of your background and what made you decide to found Fair DUI?
Sure. My background's a long story, but the short story is since 2003, I've been doing criminal defense. And I started noticing fairly early that a lot of my clients were actually innocent, in my opinion. And the system is not geared to helping innocent people demonstrate their innocence. The system is geared to forcing innocent people to plead guilty.
Now, isn't that the opposite of what it's supposed to be in terms of innocent until proven guilty?
Plain and simple, if you get pulled over and you blow a .08 or above, then you're not innocent until proven guilty as far as the DMV is concerned.
Well, that's true, yeah, but that's not a criminal thing. That's just your terms of your license and everything, right?
It's the most serious consequence that most people get from a DUI. It's what forces people to plead guilty to the crime so that they can get their license back. It depends on what state you're in. So that experience of representing a lot of drunk driving cases led me to feel that the system was unfair, and it led me to start thinking, well, what can be done to make the system more fair? And that led me to write a book, and the book led people to ask me, and the book was published on Amazon. I published on Amazon. It did fairly well, and it led to people asking me more questions, and that led to the Fair DUI flyer, which I think you guys have seen, where you hold up to the window and it says, I remain silent, no searches, I want my lawyer.
Sure. We're actually going to show a video where you actually have that T-shirt on, right? And we're going to
I should be afraid to try that in California.
I know, right? But Warren, you're out of Florida, right?
Yeah, I don't think there's a place where it's not risky. I think the problem is that the alternative choices are not always much better. And anyway, that Fair DUI flyer, some friends of mine and I started going to checkpoints and testing it out. And mostly we got minimal response. We post a YouTube video, get a few thousand views. And then New Year's Eve from 2014 to 2015, my friend Jeff did it in a checkpoint. And for some reason, and I can explain why, but that video blew up. And it's been seen by 3.6 million people.
Right,
and I was interviewed on Fox News, and I was interviewed on Associated Press, CBS This Morning. I was on the cover of the Washington Post. So there was a moment where this was a hot issue. I think that moment is past, but it's still something that I think a lot of people find interesting.
Well, yeah, it is, because the checkpoints still go on. And people still wonder, what exactly do I have to do, or what should I not be doing at these checkpoints? But let me ask you this. So you said that you guys will go out and test this out. I mean, that was fairly brave in terms of just risking your own personal freedom, right?
These are guys who would test other things in other ways. Yes, it's brave in a sense. I mean, look, I know what I'm doing, and I know that I'm being careful not to do anything. One of the things about it, by the way, is you've seen people have encounters with police where they're rude to the police.
Right.
Right? They call them names, swear at them, threaten them. What we're doing is remaining silent. So
the exact opposite, sure.
At least we're not being disrespectful. We may not be obedient or compliant to the police officer's wishes, but part of my motivation was I have friends who are cops. One of my best friends was retired fairly recently, but he was a sergeant in the New York State Police. And, I don't want people to be rude to him. Sure. One of my friends at one point, I don't know if you've seen this, but I think there's a court ruling that you can swear at police, you can flip them off, and that's protected First Amendment speech.
Right.
So one of my friends wanted to film himself going around and flipping cops the bird and calling them names. And I said, I don't want to support you doing that. I didn't get involved in this because I wanted to, call the police names.
Right. It's not an anti-police thing. It's a pro-freedom thing, basically, right? Pro-civil liberties.
Yeah, well, look, I'm not, I'm more critical of police than the average person. But,
being a defense attorney,
the ultimate problem is the orders the police follow orders, generally. I'm not saying they always follow their orders, but generally speaking, they're following orders. And when police do a checkpoint, and I don't like them doing a checkpoint, they're not doing it because they said, hey, I think I'll do a checkpoint today. They were ordered to do a checkpoint.
Or it's on overtime, and you sign up for it, which is the reason I did almost every checkpoint I ever did.
Maybe you're doing it okay, but you were still ordered to do it.
Sure.
And the way you conduct the checkpoint, you're following orders. And to me, the problem is we got to change the orders. And I don't blame the cops for following orders. You can, I got friends who, cops are the thugs, they're the bad guys, they're the gang, whatever. And I'm somewhat sympathetic to when they say that. But ultimately, when you have friends who are cops, you can't really believe that.
Right, because it's easier. It's harder to demonize somebody when you actually know people who are involved in the profession.
I was on my town board, and the town police department had some problems. The chief had to resign. Probably should have been convicted of something. He was going to casinos on town time, billing the time.
Wow.
All kinds of things going on with that. And one of the local cops had been doing things to try to expose the corruption in the department, and he didn't get treated very well. So it's it's easy to say, well, the good cop should do something about it. Yeah, well, when the good cop has his house burned down, it's kind of
oh my God.
There's kind of an incentive to not be that good of a cop.
No, you know what? Or at least to remain silent and hope that somebody else does something about it at one point, or these guys do themselves, as Gil likes to say. So listen, Warren, we have a video. I think it's a good video by way of intro. The video link you sent over, the Fair DUI flyer, order versus request. Can you intro that a little bit before we show it?
Sure. One of the things that you guys know this, when you pull someone over and you ask them, do you mind if I search your car? If they say yes, there's no Fourth Amendment issue because they consented to a request.
So they say, if you ask them, can I search your car, and they say yes. If they say, do you?
Still,
if I ask if you mind, you say no.
I'm going to search your car, get the hell out of the way.
Right, that's different.
Now that's an order.
Right.
Get out of the car, and they search the car without asking. Now, in the good old days, they could say, get out of the car, search the car, and then say you consented.
Yes.
I
heard that happen from time to time.
I'm sure that's never happened.
Yeah, I heard it happen from time to time, allegedly.
But if you're recording the encounter, they can't really say that. But one of the challenges is when a police officer says something to you, did they just give you an order? Or did they only make a request, and how should you deal with it? And that was the inspiration. That question that I kept getting was the inspiration for this video.
Got you. Okay, so then we're going to show the video, and Warren, you might have to mute your mic while the video is playing.
Okay, I'll do that.
And we're gonna roll it right now.
Hi, this is Warren Redlich from Fair DUI. I wanted to talk to you about understanding the difference between an order and a request. You're going to be in a police encounter, you're in a situation, you're sitting in your car, and a police officer is going to walk up to your window, as I'm about to show you, and the police officer says something to you, and you have a decision to make. Keep in mind, you've held up this flyer that says, I remain silent, no searches, I want my lawyer. The police officer sees that, and the police officer says something to you. And you have to distinguish between an order and a request. Let me show you this encounter. Here comes the officer. I show him the flyer. He makes a gesture, which you can't see on the video, unfortunately, to roll down your window. And I make it more easy for him to see the flyer. I put it up in his view, and he calls another guy over. The other guy comes over, and he asks to see my license. And I show him my license. And then he goes and checks on something. So here's the distinction. What's a tricky part is when the police officer goes like this to me. Is that an order? It's not a clearly stated order. I can't tell whether that's an order or a request. If it's a request, my advice is to not concede to the request. If he says, please roll down your window, that's a request. You don't have to roll down your window on a request. If he says, roll down the window or else I'm going to smash it in, for most people who don't want their window smashed in, you're probably going to want to roll down your window at that point. And that's a key distinction. The reason this matters is because as your lawyer, if the police officer gives an unlawful order to roll down your window or something else, then I now have something to challenge in court to defend you. If he gives a lawful order, well, then we're going to lose that argument later, but at least I have the argument, at least I have the opportunity as your lawyer to challenge the police behavior there. If you simply roll down your window without being asked, or you roll it down on a mere request, then I, as your lawyer, have lost that argument. I can no longer argue, hey, they violated his Fourth Amendment rights when they made him roll down the window. I want to be able to make that argument because they generally do not have a good reason to order you to roll down your window. Now, at the same time, the police officer asked to see my driver's license. It wasn't an order, show me your license or else. You couldn't hear it on the video, but I was there. He said, may I see your license, please? And I showed it to him without being ordered. And the issue there is, as I read Florida law, and I think most states' law, you are required to show your license and other paperwork upon request. It doesn't have to be an order. So, and I just think at this point, I'm not trying to create unnecessary confrontation with the police. The police asks me something, officer asks me something that I think he is entitled to, like seeing my driver's license, my registration, my insurance, my title, my concealed carry license, whatever it is. On that kind of request, I'm going to show them what they ask for. But that's the important distinction I want people to understand, the distinction between an order and a request. If a police officer asks you to roll down your window, he says, sir, would you please roll down your window? Sir, would you mind rolling down your window? Those are requests, and you shouldn't do it. If the police officer orders you to roll down your window, sir, I'm ordering you to roll down your window. Hey, roll down your window or else. He swears at you. Roll down the window or else I'm going to kick your ass. Whatever it is. If you don't roll down your window, I'm going to arrest you. Those are orders. If it's clear that it's an order, and you should be recording the encounter like I'm recording it here, if it's clear that it was an order, the police will not be able to say later that you voluntarily did it, that you consented to it. It will be clear to the judge, to any jury, whoever you're explaining this to, that this was an order, and now the police are in the position of having to explain why they gave that order and to justify whether it was lawful or not. So that's an important thing, the difference between an order and a request. Thank you.
Wow.
So we're back here with Warren Redlich, who you just saw in that video there. Now, Warren, is one of the things that you did in the video, you made the motion, the circular motion of rolling down.
Hi, I'm Luke Nichols with the law firm of
the
Nichols
window
Green here in Northern Virginia.
Can you hear me, Warren?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, in the video, you made a circular motion with your hand, which to those of us who are above 40 years old knows that means roll your window down.
Because there's a crank on the window.
Right, but not anymore. So I working the checkpoints myself. I learned that when I would tell drivers to roll their window down, I would do that motion, especially if you're working in the wintertime. Even in California, people have their windows up. Mm-hmm. And so you do that motion, and the younger drivers, whenever I would do that, the younger drivers would always just take off because they thought I was telling them, go, go, go. And I'm doing the roll your window down motion. So older drivers would get it and roll their windows down. Younger drivers wouldn't. And that shows why it's so important for you to know what the officer is saying. Is that an order? Is it a request? What exactly does that even mean? You know? Yeah. So I think that is an important distinction there. Now, what kind of pushback have you gotten from that when people have used this and gone to court?
So, well, it hasn't gone to court very often. The vast majority of times that we've done it in checkpoints, we've been told, go ahead. You know, we show the license through the window or hanging out a Ziploc bag or whatever, and most police officers figure out they're on camera and they don't want to be YouTube stars, and they send us on our way.
Now, can we talk about that? Because that's not in this video. What's the purpose of having it in the plastic bag hanging out instead of just cracking the window a little bit and handing it to the officer yourself?
So one of the theories, which I don't buy, but one of the theories that law enforcement have argued against what I'm doing or what we're doing is that they have to physically hold the license in their hands.
That's it.
That's called inspection. You have a right to inspect the license.
That's exactly what I was thinking, Warren. Because I'm trained in also how to look for fake driver's license. So there are some things that I have to touch and hold the thing up to the light to actually see it.
Sure. So there's a video that I made. That was the argument that was raised. I went through a checkpoint in Coral Gables, and it's a long story why, but I deliberately went to this checkpoint and I went further than I recommend most activists go. It was he never said, I'm ordering you to roll down the window, but he did say, sir, would you please roll down your window? If you don't, I'm going to arrest you. So it was still a request, but it was a request followed by a threat of arrest. So
right, so not really a request. We have that video on deck too. We'll show that video in a little bit.
At that point, yeah, that was an order, and if anybody else was doing it, they should have followed the order and rolled down the window. I was trying to push it for a reason. That's a long conversation. Why? And so I was arrested. I was later unarrested and issued a ticket for a non-moving, non-criminal violation. But I deliberately wanted to push the limits at that occasion.
But in the case with the window being rolled all the way up and the baggie hanging out like a plastic bag, I guess with a string or something on it with your documents inside.
Yeah.
What's the reason that people are told not to roll the window down at all and not to talk to the officers, et cetera, et cetera?
You don't. Well, look. You have a Fourth Amendment. This is not about that you're trying to hide something. This is for us, because we're activists and we're all sober and we videotapes ourselves beforehand. We video the inside of the car. There's nothing in there. We go out of our way to make sure that if somebody accuses us of something, we've got evidence that ain't true.
Right.
So this is about the Fourth Amendment. The Fourth Amendment, keep in mind, before 1925, you could not stop a car without a warrant. It's Carroll versus the United States is the U.S. Supreme Court case that came out of alcohol prohibition that said that they could stop a car based on probable cause without a warrant. If you read the text of the Fourth Amendment, you can't stop a car without a warrant. You can't search without a warrant.
Okay.
So When you roll down that window, let's just say somebody rolls down the window and you think you might have a DUI as a police officer. You're going to smell inside the car, aren't you?
Sure. This is naturally going to happen every time you pull a car over, sure.
Okay, well, so if the reason you want the window rolled down is because you want to smell inside the car, then that's a search. And I have a right as an individual not to be searched without probable cause. In the good old days, I had a right not to be searched without a warrant, but those good old days are, about 100 years gone.
Right.
So it's an assertion of your Fourth Amendment rights. I don't consent to a search, and forcing me to roll down that window is a search. Just getting back to that point about the need to inspect a license. With all due respect, that's baloney. You do not need to physically hold the license in your hand. In the case that we had a trial, which I don't think I sent you this video. There's a video, if you Google hologram lies. The sergeant who arrested me claimed that he needed to hold the license in his hand to see the hologram.
Okay.
And I made a video showing that you can see the hologram. There's this strange thing about the glass that's on cars. It allows light to pass through.
Okay.
I made a video showing that you can see the hologram from outside the car.
I'm still going to want to inspect it because there's micro printing on these licenses, especially the hard plastic licenses. There's raised type and everything on there.
So before you decide you need to inspect the license, I will ask you, is there anything about this checkpoint that led you to believe you had probable cause to suspect there was a crime associated with the license?
Okay. Well,
that's a yes or no question.
This sounds like sovereign citizen questions to me.
No. This is sovereign citizens do not believe in the Constitution.
Right, but I thought
reject the Constitution. I am advocating for the Constitution.
Warren, I thought that the Supreme Court has already ruled on this, and the judgment. What does it say? We therefore hold that it is consistent with the Fourth Amendment that these DUI checkpoints are consistent with the Fourth Amendment. So, what about that?
If you're speaking about Michigan versus Sitz, which is the 1990 case where the U.S. Supreme Court allowed checkpoints,
right,
that was a reference to the stop, whether you could stop a vehicle. The Supreme Court has not really addressed what happens after the stop. There's also, a lot of people don't talk about it, there's a 2000 U.S. Supreme Court case, Indianapolis versus Edmonds, where they were conducted a checkpoint for drugs. And the Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that. There's a lot of court cases.
Yeah, that's a specific kind of a deal, though. But we do have a caller, and I want to let that caller jump in and have that caller.
Wait, before we go to the caller, can I just ask?
Well, caller's been on the hold for like.
Oh, but I just want to ask Warren one question. Warren, if you're not driving under the influence, why wouldn't you just roll down your window and cooperate with the officer?
Are you telling me that no innocent person has ever been arrested for drunk driving?
No, I'm asking a question.
I'm answering the question.
You're answering with a question. I'm asking for an answer to a question.
Because innocent people get arrested wrongly.
So that's why you're suggesting that even if you're not driving under the influence, that they don't have a right to do their job.
You've had 2 glasses of wine 2 hours ago. You know you're sober. You know the police officer's going to ask you, have you anything to drink tonight? Do you want to answer that question?
Well, you're saying you don't want to put yourself in jeopardy, and you have a right, the whole Fifth Amendment thing, et cetera, right?
Do you want him to smell inside your car, and do you want to answer the question? You don't want him to smell inside the car because he might smell wine.
I don't care whether a cop smells inside my vehicle or not. My point is that if I'm not driving under the influence, why am I not cooperating with the officer?
So I don't know what happens in California. I know what happens in New York and Florida. In Florida, if a police officer thinks you're drunk and he arrests you, he takes you to the station, which might be 45 minutes away.
Right.
Car's been towed. You blow a 0.000 on the breath test machine.
Okay.
Your mugshot goes on the internet. You're charged with DUI. You're held for 8 hours.
Why are you still charged at that point?
Yeah.
This is Florida.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Well, and it happens in other states. Florida is not the only state where this happens. I know of an incident where it happened in Alaska. It does not generally happen in New York. I don't know about California. I don't know about other states. But I know that you don't want to be arrested.
Well, yeah, certainly. So now listen, let's get to our caller who's been hanging on. Caller, what's your name and where are you calling from? Caller? Did we lose our caller? See, I knew that was going to happen. We kind of drilled down a little bit there. Hey, sorry about that, caller. Give us a shout back, 323-293-3375, and we'll get to you more quickly next time.
But this is a fundamental issue that I think divides a lot of people. The most common response I get is, hey, if you have nothing to hide, just cooperate and everything will be okay. Well, we know there are cops who aren't trained well. We know there are cops who are bad cops. And if you've had nothing to drink, I give a lot of people, and one of my other videos I think I may have sent you was, who is this for? If you're, forgive me for being racist, but if you're a white male who frequently gets breaks, and I'm one of these guys, okay, you get pulled over for 52 and a 40. This has happened to me a couple times. And, you know, you're polite with the police officer and you end up getting a break. You don't get a speeding ticket, you get a headlight out violation, you get a warning, right? I'm that guy. I've gotten those breaks multiple times. If you know you were going a little over the limit, you know you haven't had anything to drink, then you know if you play the game, you got a good chance of getting a break. So do that. But if you've had 2 glasses of wine, and I've represented people who've been prosecuted, who've had bad breath test results that, you know, juries found them not guilty, but you know, I don't know, maybe you guys believe breath test machines are always accurate. I know I don't.
Well,
if you
that
don't
coupled
want,
with your field sobriety test is really what every drunk driving arrest I ever made, every DUI I ever popped, it was not just some numbers, it was them failing the field sobriety test and then going down to the station and then blowing. Always a fairly high
I know
number.
all that goes on, but my problem is I've represented people who failed all the field sobriety tests and blew 0.000. I've represented people who multiple witnesses said they were sober, said they were with them for 4 hours, they only had 2 drinks, and they were arrested, and including, you know, independent witnesses at the scene, and they're arrested, taken to the station, they blow a .23.
Well, yeah, because alcohol affects different people differently, right? We all know that. 2 glasses of wine
you
for me
cannot
is
have
one
2
thing.
glasses
2 glasses of wine for somebody else is something
0.3.
else.
You cannot have 2 glasses of wine and blow a .23. You cannot physically do that.
That's right.
It's not enough alcohol to cause that in your system. It's not.
Well, yeah, not a standard glass. I'm thinking the big balloon goblet. But I see your point.
And you know, there's a problem with mouth alcohol. Now, differences in different states. Florida and California both, you have to blow twice. And the blow has to be within .02 of each other to count.
Right.
In New York, they only blow once. And, you know, I would ask you, because I had a trial in Florida not too long ago, guy blows a 139 and a 157. That's .018 apart. That's almost .202 apart. And it's within 3 minutes of each other. How reliable is this machine? If your speedometer was routinely off, you know, it was like wiggling as you're driving, you know, you're going to steady speed.
Let's talk about that, though. We know that there are other factors at play here. Your speedometer is going to respond to a set of fixed mechanical systems that are going to make that speed show up on that dial a certain way depending on other forces. But with the DUI, if that person has burped, had something to eat, et cetera, during that period of time, it could throw it off, right? And that's what we're told, to watch that person for that period of time, to make sure they haven't had anything to eat, to make sure they're not sitting there constantly burping, et cetera, because it does skew the results. So
you're told to do things a certain way.
At play here.
You're told to do things a certain way.
Right.
Okay, so I watched the video of how the breath test operator conducts the breath test of my client, completely violating how they're supposed to conduct the breath test. Completely not what they're supposed to be doing. The expert for the county, for Palm Beach County at the time, I don't know, I think he retired, has, you know, this is the guy who's the expert on how breath testing is done, has completed some college coursework. Okay, he's not a chemical engineer. He doesn't have a bachelor's degree in chemistry. He doesn't even have an associate's degree. And this guy's the county expert on breath testing. And you know, the expectation that I have about the reliability of methods used to determine whether somebody's guilty or not are not met by what I see in my work. And you know, another step, by the way, is the drug DUIs, which, if you read National Highway Transportation Safety Association research, drugs do not increase the risk of driving. There may be an exception here or there, but generally speaking, marijuana, cocaine, Xanax, whatever you want to talk about.
If you shoot some heroin up and get behind the wheel, you're going to be a hazard. I'm sorry, I don't see how that cannot be the case.
I understand you believe that, but what I'm saying is the research from the agency that trains police officers how to detect drug impairment and alcohol impairment, that agency did its own research and said that drugs do not increase the risk of driving. Alcohol does.
Okay. Well, now listen. Let's push pause on that, because we have a caller. Hopefully, it's the same caller from before. We can get to the call. Caller, what's your name and where are you calling from?
My name's John Jordan, and I'm calling from Los Angeles.
Hello, John Jordan from Los Angeles. What do you got for us, sir?
You know, I was watching the program, and the one thing that came to mind as a motor officer is most of my traffic stops, I'd say about 99% of them, are pretty consistent. It usually goes fairly normal, and it's uneventful.
Okay.
Right.
If I ever stop somebody, and the first thing that they do is deviate from the norm and hold up a sign stating all the things that are on that placard, that's going to immediately raise a red flag to me.
Now, why is that? Why is that for people listening at home? Why is that?
Well, that would lead me to believe that this person might be a frequent flyer of DUI, that they might have been down this road, and they think that this might prevent an officer from conducting their investigation because they believe that that person might be under the influence.
Gotcha. Okay.
One other thing that I wanted to touch on was the interpretation of whether or not the driver has to physically present a driver's license and the registration to the police officer. And here in California, it's very specific in saying, upon request or demand of the officer, that person has to present it for examination. And you guys already touched on it. There are things on the driver's license that are tactile, that are sensitive to light, that the officer needs to confirm that it is a valid driver's license.
Right. Definitely.
So I think if somebody were to go down the road and say, I don't need to give this to you, the city attorney, the district attorney's office has already done briefs on this for police officers to say, hey, if you come across this situation, we will support you in demanding that paper, demanding those documents.
Hey, John, I have a question for you. This is Gil Contreras speaking. I have a question for you. Hey, as a motor officer, and I was a court-qualified DUI expert back in the day. I used to do this all day long, alcohol and drugs. Have you ever heard, or is there something new that I don't know about that's been put out as training for police officers that says that driving under the influence of drugs doesn't impair your driving?
The thing that I have heard in regards to narcotics themselves, that the way that the DMV hearings occur, there is some DMV is not handling under the influence of narcotics the same as alcohol. I personally haven't been in one of those hearings and have had any detailed conversations with anybody from the DMV. But that is the word that is coming to the line officers, that they are handling it somewhat differently.
Okay. But there's no training that you know of that says driving under the influence of narcotics only apparently doesn't offer the same degree of impairment.
Well, usually when an officer comes across somebody that is showing the signs of being under the influence of something, and they have reason to believe it's not alcohol, then usually we will request a DRE, a drug recognition expert.
Right.
And they will do their investigation, and that officer will usually either take over the arrest or do a supplemental stating, through their training experience, they feel that this person is under the influence of whatever narcotic.
Well, the other thing about that is, so now I'm the DRE, and I show up, and I've got this motor officer who stopped this person for driving while impaired. And now, as the DRE, they say all you've got is a hammer, and every problem is like a nail, right? As a DRE, I'm going to be more inclined to book this person for 11,550 for being under the influence than I am for driving under the influence, right? Because that's my wheelhouse. That's what I know how to do. I can write an 11,550 or an under the influence report in my sleep. So that's probably why those don't end up going in the system that way, because the DREs handle it, not the motor.
I don't remember it that way. I remember doing driving under the influence of alcohol/drugs. I never ran into one that was just drugs, not alcohol. Number one, but number two, I ran into several where there was both present based on objective symptoms. So they were just documented the same way. We didn't go 11,550.
But I mean, now this is you were acting as a DRE, or are you acting as a traffic
as a DUI enforcement officer?
That's what I'm saying. So for you, yeah, you're going to take it as a deuce because that's what you know how to do. The DRE shows up, he takes it off the motor officer's hands. He's going to treat it as 11,550 because that's what he knows how to do. That's what I'm saying. I think when you turn it over to the DRE, you're going to get DRE stuff.
Right. But
I think what the courts or the DAs more specifically want to see is if if you're involved, they want your documentation of what you observed and whatnot. If the DRE comes in and gives his expert opinion, they want that as well. Right. Now, what we're seeing a lot of is both are on board. There's alcohol, and then there's narcotics.
Okay.
How often, the person's more under the influence of narcotics, I don't know. But
now let me bring Warren on that. Now, Warren, what about that combination there of the drugs and the alcohol? Is that something you've seen a lot in your practice, or is that something that has
I haven't
any impact?
seen a lot, but the science is pretty strong that alcohol impairs. And not just that alcohol impairs, by the way. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, yeah, we got you.
There's two issues. There's whether alcohol impairs or drugs impair, and then whether they increase the risk of driving. The reason that we have alcohol driving while drunk is illegal is because it greatly increases the risk of an accident. It's not just that function is impaired, because you could say, going to Burger King drive-thru and eating a burger while you're driving impairs your driving. And there's all kinds of things that impair driving. But the question that I think is important is, does this behavior increase the risk of driving? And that's a distinction. The article I was talking about says that drugs do not increase the risk. That doesn't mean they don't impair some kind of function that might, in theory, make you a worse driver in some ways, but that people who use drugs do not have a higher rate of accidents than people who don't.
Well, you were going to say about causal factors?
Comparing driving under the influence of drugs and driving under the influence of a cheeseburger, it was just silly.
I don't think he's saying under the influence of the cheeseburger. I think he's saying the fact that you have the cheeseburger in your hands while you're driving.
Distraction.
It's a distraction.
That's distracted driving.
That's what he's saying.
That's what we call distracted driving.
But it still impairs driving.
We don't call that DUI.
It still impairs driving. It still
I don't think he was saying that. But, okay, so listen. Hey, caller, John, I appreciate the call. I appreciate you offering your expertise, because I was never a motor officer, and I know you've probably done more deuces in one DP than I did my whole career. So, hey, I appreciate you calling in.
Can I respond to the caller?
Yeah, please do.
Sure. So just so people can see it, I don't know if you guys can show this. This is the flyer. And so what the officer was saying is that if somebody asserts their rights, that's suspicious.
Well, it raises a red flag. It's out of the norm. It's out of the norm.
Let the officer respond. Officer?
Like I said earlier, 99.99% of my traffic stops are all the same. People, tend to generally respond to me and what I'm doing pretty consistently. If somebody were to have this pre-printed out sign and hold it up to the window and refuse to present, my request, present their driver's license and registration, it would not be normal out of the, tens of thousands of traffic stops that I've conducted. So, hey, I'm the first one to stand up for somebody exercising their rights. I think any good police officer would go out of their way to make sure that anybody that they're dealing with, whether they're a suspect or a victim, make sure that their rights are protected and remain intact, and that officer doesn't infringe on those.
That's right.
I think that what that sign represents is more so as a way for the driver not to roll down the window, because even the most basic, officer would be able to detect the odor of alcohol. I mean, that's, when I all of it, that's what it's all about.
Isn't it then a search? Doesn't that mean you want to smell inside the car? You want to search?
No, I don't think it's directly for that. I think it's incidental to you rolling down the window and handing me your license.
It's almost like something being in plain sight. You normally have a conversation with the person that you stop. They want to know why they've been stopped. You want to explain to them why they've been stopped. And somebody that doesn't want to have a conversation with you after you have conducted a traffic stop is out of the norm.
That's not normal behavior. That's correct.
Now, how does implied consent come into all of this, though, in terms of when you, being that you don't have a right to drive, not in California, it's a privilege, right? It's a suspendable, revocable privilege. What do you mean it's not true? Having a driver's license?
Supreme Court ruled that once you have the license, it's a vested right, and it cannot be taken away without due process.
So that's not what I mean. In terms of property interest, you're talking about in terms of property interest, right?
It is a right.
Okay. No. I'm not talking about.
Right. I'm talking about the California Supreme Court ruled.
But when you get that, you agree. When you apply for that license to get that initial privilege, there's that implied consent that by applying for this, Now you are agreeing that if you are stopped, that you'll turn these documents over per the officer's request.
No,
And
I don't believe implied consent is about the documents. Implied consent is about when you have been lawfully arrested and you are asked to take a breath test, you have consented, or a chemical test.
That's part of, yeah.
Implied consent is about the chemical test. It is not about surrendering documents. It is not about surrendering your Fourth Amendment rights. It is only about the breath test.
Okay.
Or the blood test.
Or the urine test.
Urine test, blood test. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Chemical tests. Okay. Implied consent is about those tests. It is not about field sobriety tests. It is not about handing over documents. It does not mean you have to let police, go all over your car. Look, you agree. You pull somebody over for something, you don't get to search you can't just search his car. You have to have probable cause to search the car, right? We all agree on that.
Right, or consent, or a warrant, right?
Right. So now, you don't have the warrant. You don't get the warrant without probable cause.
Right.
So you can't. So when the person says no, I don't want to roll down my window, you got to think. The whole point of this really is to take the police officer. It's funny because the caller said, this is out of the norm, and part of the idea here is to take the police officer outside of his box. And if there's one thing you guys might think this is funny, you might not, but the one thing your captain doesn't want his police officer to do is he doesn't want him to think. They don't want their officer to think. They want him to follow his training. And if you take a police officer and you make him think, that may make the sergeant or the supervisor uncomfortable. I don't want them thinking. I just want them to do what they're trained to do. And
police officers are problem solvers. Yeah, we're decision makers and problem solvers.
Right.
You got to be able to think on your feet.
You think that way, but your supervisor might not.
I was a supervisor. I was a supervisor for quite a long time, and as that great 20th century American philosopher Ice Cube the Great says, "When it's sink or swim, you got to think to win." So police officers in the field they stay alive and stay safe by their ability to think.
Hey, John.
You mean critical thinking, though? You're talking about critical thinking of the situation.
Right? But you're now confronting this moment. The person has asserted the right to remain silent. The person has said, I don't want any searches. Now, I want my lawyer probably can leave out, but they said they've asserted the right to remain silent. They don't want any searches. So what's your reason for forcing the window down? And, example is you're saying, well, we have to inspect the license. Well, where is your probable cause to believe that there's something wrong with the license? You don't have it. So if you don't have probable cause, you can't search. Inspecting the license, holding the license in your hand is a search. Isn't it a search?
That's an inspection.
I would disagree with that. And I think most people forget that pretty much anything issued from the Department of Motor Vehicle is actually the property of the state.
Yeah, there you go.
So, the license plates on your car, your driver's license, the registration paperwork, you're just paying a fee for the DMV to process that so that you can have it in the vehicle or in your possession that allows you to drive or operate the vehicle on the roadway. Now, I've stopped many of people that have literally cracked their window where the only thing that could be slipped out is a driver's license. And as a police officer, my goal is customer satisfaction. I want the driver to understand why they've been stopped. They don't necessarily have to agree with it, and most of the time they don't, but I need to be able to communicate to that person that I'm detaining for the violation to understand what's happening. Now, if they don't want to talk to me, that's fine. That just makes my job easier and gets me through my citation quicker. Now, again, when people start behaving out of the norm, it does raise suspicions. A good trained officer would be able to detect whether a person is under the influence by physical things happening with the defendant. They don't even necessarily need to speak to the person. They can look at them and see physically that, hey, there's something not right here.
Signs of impairment, etc.
Correct. So, one thing I wanted to touch on before I get off with you guys is, these checkpoints, these DUI checkpoints are happening for a reason because a lot of people, a lot of families are affected by people that get killed or seriously injured in collisions involving drunk drivers.
Right.
This is this is a result from police listening to the outcry of the community, saying, "Hey, look, we need to do something about this." And essentially, it's a deterrent to prevent people from getting behind the wheel and driving. And there's so much of an outcry that police departments are given money through grants to conduct these checkpoints, usually in high, volume bar areas and et cetera. And the majority of the public doesn't have an issue with it. And considering we're in California, which is a fairly liberal state, you would think otherwise, but this is something very important. So, it is what it is.
John, it's Gil Contreras here. I just think the DUI checkpoints are just a waste of time. I think it's a waste of resources, and I think we'd be better served by saturation patrols and enforcing the California Vehicle Code while you're on patrol, having officers, motors, and vehicles to do that. I just think just having so many cops standing around, waiting, pushing, 100 cars, 300 cars through to get 2 or 3 arrests. It just seems like a big waste of money to me. And part of the reason for the outcry from the public was because of lobbying groups like MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, that made this a bigger issue. And I think the days where MAD was, had something to really speak to, I think now, we're in a different day now. I just don't see the usefulness of the DUI checkpoint.
Well, let's not forget, though, that people were dying. People still do die from drunk driving accidents. I mean, it's a real thing.
Right, but checkpoints aren't stopping that.
Well, there's a deterrent. There's a deterrent factor.
Here's what the research says. The research, there's sort of two lines of research. One line of research is states that do checkpoints see fewer drunk driving deaths. The other line of research is that saturation patrols, as you said, lead to a lot more arrests. And my own experience with DUI checkpoints is that there are very few DUI arrests. There are a lot of other violations written, suspended license, equipment violations, whatever.
Right.
My experience is you'll stop 700 cars, you'll make 1 DUI arrest with 40 officers manning the checkpoint. If you had those 40 officers out on routine patrol, forget about saturation patrol, just on routine patrol, 40 officers would make more than 1 DUI arrest.
What the caller just said, it's a deterrent. So if you're getting fewer drunk driving arrests, does that mean there are fewer drunk drivers because of the checkpoint? That's one of the things you can't really quantify.
So the problem with the idea of it as a deterrent is if you read the U.S. Supreme Court's decision, Michigan versus Sitz, and by the way, I don't agree with the decision. I don't agree that
Let me let the caller off the phone. He's been with us for a while. Caller, hey, appreciate you. Thanks for the call. Thanks for the support.
Thank you so much. You guys have a good night.
Thanks, John.
Caller. So the problem is that the reason that DUI checkpoints were allowed was not for sending a message. The reason they were allowed is because they were arguably effective at making arrests. And the evidence is that there are other things that are more effective at making arrests, and that's why I think the Supreme Court was wrong in Michigan versus Sitz, and why I think you're right that just look, half of my arguments go away if you stop doing checkpoints and you just do saturation patrol, routine patrol.
But what about on nights or weekends where we know there's a high incidence of drunk driving incidents or drunk driving accidents, like New Year's Eve and Memorial Day and Labor Day?
Saturation patrol during those high party times is much more effective than a DUI checkpoint.
Exactly. Saturation patrols are more effective, and you're not stopping people without suspicion.
Right.
That's you're stopping people when they've done something wrong. And the whole point is if you stop somebody when they've done something wrong, there's a much higher likelihood that that person is impaired.
And that they actually have done something wrong. No, I get that. And I worked the checkpoints for many years, not DUI checkpoints. These are security checkpoints coming into a major international airport. But still, we didn't get any bombs out of that. We didn't get any terrorists with box cutters. We got a lot of narcotics, and we got a lot of people bringing guns into the airport that were there for other reasons. I mean, they just happened to have guns with them that they shouldn't have had. They weren't bringing the guns into the airport per se. So I do get that, but I still think that the deterrent effect, and if there wasn't a deterrent effect, people wouldn't be worried about checkpoints and broadcasting the locations of checkpoints.
The fact that they broadcast in print and TV, broadcast it also about where they're going to be, it doesn't stop anybody from, they just go,
police. I don't mean the police. I mean the people, the public says, hey, look out, there's a checkpoint over here, because they're concerned about it.
They
do it on Twitter.
Only if they're drinking and driving.
Right. That's a deterrent. That's what I'm saying. So that's the deterrent
for them from drinking and driving. It deters them from driving through the checkpoint.
Right. Exactly.
So they're still going to drink and drive. They just want to get around the checkpoint now.
That's right.
Well, here's one of the things about drunk driving law that bothers me. We are, in my opinion, and this is part of my book, but we are way too harsh on first-time offenders, and we're way too easy on repeat offenders. And I'm a member of a defense lawyer's email list in Florida, and there was a discussion about what's the worst client you've had in terms of number of DUI arrests? And one guy had a client who had 20 DUI arrests.
Wow.
If you've managed to get 20 DUI arrests,
you drive drunk every day, if that's the case.
Then we're not doing enough about repeat offenders. And what bothers me is you get your first DUI, and it depends what states. Some states are better than the others. Some counties are better than others. Orlando is actually very reasonable, but
California's rough.
If you stamp somebody, you put you brand them on their forehead with drunk for the rest of their lives on the first offense where they blew a .09 or .07 in New York, depending on what it is. You've really impacted that person's life for the rest of their life, and you didn't give them you didn't do the education, you didn't do the other things that would really help prevent them from doing it again. And you're stigmatizing people, and I get, okay, this is a bad thing, but you could whack somebody over the head with a pool cue in a bar fight and not end up with lifelong consequences. But you get pulled over and you blow .07 in New York or a .09 in most states, and all of a sudden you're marked for life. I think we've gone too far on that.
Okay, so there it is. And there's that societal pendulum that I like to talk about. And my partner's not going to roll his eyes and groan. But, for the longest time, it was almost a joke that people would get behind the wheel and drive drunk. You guys remember in the days of Dean Martin and Foster Brooks, how, it would be, they'd make a joke out of it when the police officer would pull them over and they'd be too drunk to talk. And that was considered part of a comedy routine. Yeah. And then people tolerated it until we realized how many people were being killed by drunk drivers every year. So then the reaction went all the way to the extreme. And that's where we are now. We're still over there. And so I don't think we're going to see it come to the middle anytime soon.
Well, no, police departments are getting grants to do these things. They're getting money to pay for the officers to be out there. So why would they? Even if they're ineffective, why wouldn't they just keep doing it?
Well, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point.
And as much as, I kind of disagree with you, Warren, about cooperating with the officer if you haven't been drinking, I'm totally against, personally, I'm totally against the checkpoint. The way that I learned how to be a cop was you had to have probable cause to make a stop. So, if I haven't committed a traffic violation, in my opinion, you have no right to pull me into your little checkpoint and ask me anything.
Well, they're very careful not to pull you into the checkpoint. The checkpoint's set up in the traffic lane. And then you'll stop.
Well, no,
right?
I'm pulled out of traffic lane into the cones and stopped and asked questions.
No, the cones are in the traffic lane. They're not off to the side until you get sent over to secondary.
Done different ways. They're done different ways. In Florida, you are some cars are just passed through without any real conversation with the police. They use what's called the shoot method in at least in South Florida, where they'll have a room for 12 cars, and they'll take 12 cars in. And then they had to do an initial inspection. May I see your license and registration? Or hi, the brief conversation. And then the vast majority of those cars are waved out without any incident. And some of the cars are directed to what's known as secondary inspection.
Right.
So, and I think that's pretty commonly how checkpoints are done. Is you're either stopped or you're not stopped. When you're stopped, there's a brief conversation, license inspection, whatever. Maybe they look around the vehicle to look for equipment violations, whatever. And then you're typically released within 30 seconds, fairly quickly.
Right.
Unless there's a car stopped in front of you and they can't let you go. But the encounter is basically over. It's the decision to move you into secondary that only happens if the officer has some kind of suspicion or
that's where the detention occurs.
Cause.
Exactly. That's where the detention occurs.
But the police Supreme Court ruled that initial stop, that is a seizure. That is a Fourth Amendment issue, and the Supreme Court said, yeah, it's a seizure, but there's this massive death toll on the highways, and we got to do something, which I just don't buy. I don't buy what happened in 1925 either. Look, you don't like what the Fourth Amendment says, then there's a process for amending, and you could probably get. I don't know that I agree that there's popular support for checkpoints. I agree that there's popular support in special interest groups and there's popular support in politicians.
Yes.
But judging by the response to what we're doing with checkpoints, I would say you might not get 50% of the population to say yes to checkpoints. I'm not sure about that.
Let me ask you this, Warren, and this is actually the question we posed in our topic tonight. Are checkpoints legal? And is that based on what they're for? Is it based on how they're configured? But I mean, overall, what's the consensus there?
So in terms of whether they're legal or not, the U.S. Supreme Court has said you can do sobriety checkpoints, you can do license checkpoints, you can do immigration checkpoints. And within that, there's this question about how you do them, which is actually, kind of where I'm going with this flyer. And I'm handling a case in Manhattan right now, New York City right now. There are a lot of court decisions about how you're supposed to do checkpoints. And a lot of police agencies don't really care And I'll give you a prime example. When this flyer got some publicity, there were sheriffs, including the president of the Florida Sheriff's Association, who said they have to talk to us in a checkpoint. So let me get this straight. I've been stopped, I'm not free to go, and I've asserted my right to remain silent, right? And you're saying if I don't talk, then I don't get out of the checkpoint. You're saying that people don't have the right to remain silent at a checkpoint.
Right. That basically is what it sounds like.
Now, no court has said that. No court has said that.
Right, but the sheriff said it.
And I don't think the courts are going to uphold that. If that hasn't, I don't have that case yet, where it's come before a judge to decide that issue. I can't imagine a judge ruling that you don't have the right to remain silent at a checkpoint. I can't imagine a judge rule. I shouldn't say that. I can't imagine it. I would find it shocking. I think it would send shockwaves across the country if a judge. And it'd be struck down.
Sure, it'd be struck down on appeal if that were the case. I'm sure.
I hope so, but I'm not sure.
I don't know. And I think if you pull into a checkpoint and I ask you, say, hey, I can see your driver's license, please, and you're in a DUI checkpoint, and you hold up a placard. I'm going to start thinking 148. I'm going to start thinking you're obstructing.
Now, 148 is obstructing or is resisting or delaying a peace officer in the performance of their duties per the California Penal Code for everybody at home.
And I think that's what John Jordan, the caller, was trying to allude to. It's not normal. And so now, to me, it becomes an officer safety issue. Like, okay, why isn't homie cooperating with me? And so now, am I being detained? You sure are, because you're in the dang checkpoint.
Okay, So what you're saying, and I don't think you're unusual for saying this, is asserting your constitutional rights is a crime.
No, I'm saying not cooperating with a police officer is a crime.
But I'm not cooperating by asserting my rights.
Right, and you're saying why don't you show it to me? And the guy's answer is going to be because I don't have to. Essentially,
well, no,
right?
The guy's not going to say anything.
Well, I know, but I mean that
he's holding a piece of paper.
He's holding up the sign. We should have another one that says that anticipates the question, because you know what the question is going to be, and then they flips it over on the other side. It says because I don't have to.
I don't know.
Actually, the one placard I've thought about adding is that an order as a question?
Right. There you go.
When a police officer says something, you hold up a thing saying, "Is that an order?" And the police officer can say yes or no, hopefully.
And then you go from there. Sure.
You've seen people say. By the way. I'm sorry, this is a little bit of a tangent, but one of the things that frustrates me more than anything else is you've seen somebody in a checkpoint or a traffic stop and they say, "Am I being detained?"
Right.
I hate that question. Because of course you're being detained.
Right. So we wouldn't be having that conversation if we weren't being detained.
That's right.
Sure.
Why are you even? And
They're
I've
asking
never
for clarification. They're asking for
clarification.
They're asking for clarification and committal or commitment is what I found.
They're not asking for clarification. They're trying to confuse the officer, and officers get afraid because of these kind of programs like Warren's here. We have these people challenging the very simple things that a policeman does. They're more complex and tougher things that we do. But this simple thing of a traffic stop has now we've gotten to this.
Yeah, but you still can't back down off of that.
People are trying to use this now to make the officers harder and more confusing. And the mistake that officers make is they get flustered and they don't know how to respond to that. So am I being detained? Yeah, that's right. If you see red lights behind you, you're being detained, brother.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And until I see your driver's license, you ain't going nowhere.
Yeah, no. So here's my take on it. Number one, let's suppose you've had a couple glasses of wine, okay, and you don't really want to be arrested, okay. The idea here is to make that police officer have to make a decision. And, keep in mind, if you see this flyer, the odds are you're being recorded.
Right, okay? Sure.
And the idea, as you saw in my video, the idea is you're giving your lawyer an argument to make in court later. Okay, if you think there's a risk that you're going to be arrested for drunk driving because you had 2 glasses of wine 2 hours ago and you're sober, you want to protect yourself from being arrested. And if you are arrested, you want your attorney to have that argument to make. If you roll down the window voluntarily, if you cooperate with the police officer voluntarily, you have taken away that argument from me. So my response, by the way, if you're a police officer and you see this and you believe, I don't agree with you, by the way, but if you believe you have a right to hold that license in your hand, then make it a clear order. Say, I'm ordering you to roll down your window and hand me your license.
Well, problem solved. I mean, what I was always taught was that progression goes in 4 stages. It's ATOM, the word Adam. Ask, tell, order, make. And the ask is the first, hello, sir, may I see your blah, 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 blah. and then the guy is going to be resistant, or he's going to hold up a little card, and then I'm going to tell him, and he's going to ask me, is that an order? He's going to flip his sign over. It's going to say, is that an order? And I'm going to say, yeah, I'm giving you an order. And then if he still doesn't do it, then I'm going to make him do it. I mean, that's just what we've been taught.
So
ask, tell,
just so you
order,
know,
make.
on the back of the flyer, there's instructions, and one of the instructions is, do not physically resist. If the officer clearly states a lawful order, it is safer to comply.
Definitely.
Okay?
And you
So-
can complain later if you have a problem with how I handle it.
That's right.
No,
That's
and
right.
my goal is, as an attorney, is I don't want you to comply with the request. I want you to force the police officer to make it a clear order. If the police officer gives you a clear order, then you follow the order. And now if you get arrested and you get charged, I can now argue, wait a minute, he didn't have a proper basis for that order, and you should suppress all the evidence that flows from it. Judge.
Okay, and and that's what I said earlier. People are asking for clarification and commitment, because now I've committed myself and said that's an order, and then that gives you something to work on.
Right, and that's all. That's what, because I've had so many cases where, you get pulled over, and the police officer says, "Have you had anything to drink tonight?" Why would anybody say yes?
Well, because
well, number one, you don't ask, have you had anything to drink? You say, how much have you had to drink tonight?
Yeah.
And
I've heard it asked a bunch of different ways.
And the typical response is 2 beers.
Two beers.
I've had a client, tell the police officer he had 3 beers. Now, I'm gonna guess that you guys think if the guy says 3 beers, he's had 5 or 6,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly, or more.
That's
You're
right.
not helping yourself by
No,
saying
you're
I've
right.
had 3 beers.
Right, but Warren, if you're telling the truth and you get out of the car, and if you tell me, yeah, I've had 2 beers and I already think because I can smell the alcohol, I have you step out and you tell me I'm going to do my gaze nystagmus test, and that's going to tell me a lot. That I got so good at this, I could guess the breathalyzer based on the gaze nystagmus test. So if it's not there in the gaze nystagmus and you can pass my FST, I'm probably going to just write you a citation for something if there's something to cite you for, or I'm just going to give you your stuff back and tell you to take it easy and drive home.
But I think you're one of the better cops.
Okay.
I've handled a lot of DUI cases, and I've cross-examined a lot of police officers about gaze nystagmus, walk and turn, one-leg stand, and I would say out of, call it 100 officers, 3 of them have done the tests right. I mean, just a simple example, when you're checking for maximum deviation, how far do you hold, how far do you go with your finger or whatever the stimulus?
That's the question for you.
So I'm looking for onset of horizontal nystagmus.
Not angle of onset. You're looking for nystagmus at maximum deviation. How far do you move your finger or your stimulus to see their eyeball? How far do you move the eyeball for that test? That portion of the test.
Just off to the right, enough to make the eyeball either bounce or follow smoothly.
No, you go to maximum deviation. You take the eyeball as far as it'll go. And what do you look for at maximum deviation? Most police officers say, I look for nystagmus.
Right, the bounce.
You're supposed to look for its distinct and sustained nystagmus. If you see ordinary nystagmus, the FSF's manual says it's normal to have ordinary nystagmus at maximum deviation. And many police officers get it wrong.
That's why you don't go to maximum deviation.
There's 3 components of the test.
Okay.
There's angle of onset, which is you look for whether nystagmus starts at before 45 degrees. And there's one called
we're going to start losing people as we get into the scientific and physiological aspects of the human eye. So listen, but we do have to start wrapping it up here. Listen, Warren, we're going to have you back on, and we're going to have to get you started earlier in the show because we could really drill down. We didn't really talk. We were talking about the checkpoint, and then we get into DUI. But I think there's so much material on DUI. We should just do a show on that because there's so much stuff for people to talk about. And you, as an expert and as an attorney representing people in these cases specifically, you have a lot to share. And Gil's got a lot to share in terms of his experience. I did some deuces, but that wasn't my thing. That was Gil's thing. So
that in 11.550s.
Yeah, there you go.
And I had the best teacher in the world. You know who he is?
Reginald Stewart.
No, not Reggie.
Reggie T. Stewart?
No.
Oh, not that, the little. Okay, we won't say his name. So listen, Warren, I do appreciate you joining us tonight, especially I know it's late out there on the East Coast. And let's stay in touch, man, and let's bring you back on the Ride Along Radio Show.
Thank you very much for having me on.
All right, everybody. That was Attorney Warren Redlich, founder
Good discussion, Warren.
of Fair DUI. Yeah, great discussion. Thank you, sir. All right. So We covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, and
that caller was fantastic. Thank you, caller John.
Yeah, John Jordan. He's also a follower in our social media stuff, so he chimes in a lot. So I'm glad to have him participate, and especially being a motor officer, that was helpful.
Right, definitely.
But, so I hope we didn't get too far out there in the weeds on the.
Well, we didn't lose people, but we'll wrap it back around and do a DUI story. We do a DUI show, and
that's right, because there are defenses for this, and I kind of think he's talking about defending people who have been drinking and get caught in a checkpoint. Because I've known guys who have said, they're driving and go, oh, man, sure, there's a lot of traffic.
Right.
Wow,
yeah.
They're doing bright lights. They're doing construction at night, on a Saturday night. That's funny. And then they end up in a checkpoint, and, next thing you know.
They're in handcuffs.
There they is.
Yeah.
On the one hand, I kind of get what he's doing, but on the other hand, he's making the officer's job really a lot more difficult.
But guys got to get good. Guys got to get better at it, like you said.
And I think that's the thing.
Guys got to get better at their jobs.
We cannot be intimidated by guys like that.
Right, because then if you understand, you understand, and,
and
you'll stand up and answer the questions and do what you're supposed to do, and you'll handle it properly.
Right.
If you've got more training in it. So there's back to that training issue.
Yeah.
So listen, we're gonna wrap it up. We always invite you guys to like our Facebook page. And you can follow us on Instagram at Ride Along Radio Show. Follow us on Twitter, Ride Along Radio. And it seems like every couple of days we get more Twitter followers. So I guess people have been paying attention to that. Gil, you've got some social media you want to put out there?
I'm on Facebook. If you just put my name in there, I'll pop up. And I generally let the public in. I stopped letting the public post stuff, though, because it just got a little bit crazy there for...
oh, really?
Yeah, just, dang liberals, man. You guys are hostile. But I'm also on Twitter at the 1035 Report.
All right. So... there you go. And so we will see you guys back here next Thursday at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time here on the Morris Media Network. And so signing off, I'm George Holt.
And I'm Gil Contreras.
And this has been the Ride Along Radio Show.
See ya.